Let me greet you officially with the formal greeting that is found among all Jews. Shalom Aleichem. Peace be unto you. And Bob said it correctly. Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem, Shalom. Peace be unto you. It means a great deal more than that. It's a very lengthy greeting if you know the history of the term Shalom Aleichem. To most of us, it is simply a word that says peace. What you're going to hear and what you have already seen this afternoon probably doesn't bring a lot of peace to you. But the Holocaust is a very, very important piece of history. And that is why we are gathered together here this afternoon. Officially, the term is Yom HaShoah, which means the Day of Remembrance. That date was last Thursday, the 2nd of May. This is the 5th of May, so we're just a few days beyond the official Yom HaShoah. It is a time that is set aside to remember. That's what we want you to do here this afternoon. We want you to remember the 6 million Jews that were killed during that 12-year reign of terror called the Holocaust. From 1933 to the end of World War II, in 1945, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party systematically and with great precision killed, murdered, slaughtered over 6 million Jews throughout Germany and the occupied territories. Here is a startling figure. 1.5 million of the 6 million who were murdered were children. Jewish history is over 4,000 years old. Through the 6, 7, or 8 civilizations, great civilizations of history, Jews have survived in spite of every attempt to erase them from the pages of history. Jews have always been the target of persecution, but in spite of that fact, Jews have risen to the challenge, faced the issues, faced death. And today, the nation of Israel, which came into existence in 1948, remains alive and well, and indeed is thriving. It is difficult, is it not, to put into perspective the number 6 million. To many, that is just a number, 6, with a whole lot of zeros beyond it. It is just a number until you are able to put a name and a face to that number. In just a few moments, you will have the opportunity to put a name and a face to that number. In just a few moments, I will have the great honor and privilege of introducing to you a Holocaust survivor, Mr. Robert Kahn. Knowing Bob and Gertrude is indeed one of the great privileges that Connie and I have. As I said before, I think it is not by accident that Connie and I had the privilege of meeting Bob and Gert and getting to know them and spending some quality time with them, getting to know them, and to have the privilege, truly, of being able to say that we are friends with not just one but two people who are in fact survivors of the Holocaust. And with that, I do want to introduce Robert's wife, Gertrude. She has some health issues that she has been dealing with, and I know, Gert, that this was not an easy trip for you, but we are indeed very privileged to have you here today. Gert is also a survivor of the Holocaust. I want to keep this introduction relatively short. Mr. Kahn's life, I think, can be divided into two great parts. Life under National Socialism, better known as the Third Reich, or Nazism. And the second part, part two, after he arrived here in the United States. I will leave the first part of his life up to him, as I'm sure that is what he wants to talk about this afternoon. His life after arriving here in the United States was one that was filled and is still filled with adventure. I smile because he's still very active at 95. You can imagine how fortunate we are to have him with us this afternoon. Life after arriving here in the United States has been filled with adventure, in a sense being at the right place at the right time, and his tremendous contribution to this country during and after World War II, particularly during and after the Cold War with Russia. After arriving here in the United States, Bob was old enough to join the Army, the United States military, and fought at the height of World War II, believe it or not, in the South Pacific, not in Europe, as you would expect. Bob says the military probably felt I had an axe to grind, so they sent me to the South Pacific. Following World War II, Mr. Kahn worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with the War Department in the Intelligence Service. He worked on top security projects, one of which was called Paperclip. His later assignments included work for the National Security Council. Mr. Kahn received a presidential citation from President Lyndon Johnson. During all of this that was going on in his life, he managed to earn a college degree from the University of Oklahoma. So as you can see from this introduction, Bob is not only a Holocaust survivor, but he is also an extremely accomplished professional. The miracle of it all is that he survived the Holocaust and lived to tell his story. And we are indeed most fortunate today to have Bob Kahn and his wife Gertrude with us. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and my very great honor to introduce to you our friend and Holocaust survivor, Mr. Robert Kahn. Bob?
Thank you. You bet. Good afternoon. I want to thank people for bringing me here into this beautiful church. And while I'm not sure I'm doing this in the order in which it is expected, I'd like to thank the Honorable Mr. Willman, the mayor of this great town, a town that is known very well all over the country for its historical contribution of early America. And Mr. Willman, I'm not sure where you're sitting. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Greenville is known not only for a beautiful town, but also for a museum that has the early artifacts of America and a wonderful exhibit of Annie Oakley. And I say this specifically because my grandfather, who unfortunately was murdered by the Nazis, he saw and witnessed Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in the 1800s. And he had a poster hanging in his house showing Buffalo Bill and showing Annie Oakley. And every time he walked past that poster with me in tow, he told me how wonderful the show was about cowboys and Indians, and he said also some buffaloes. So with this in mind, I want to thank you for inviting me to this beautiful city that has a long history of America. And I want to present to you my book of Hard Road of Dreams, Remembering Not to Forget. And I have a dedication here to the Honorable Steve Willman. It says, keenly proud and optimistic that my dreams for a just and peaceful world are achievable. And I hope this comes true.
Thank you so much.
And if you read this by tomorrow morning, let me know.
I'll let you know. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll
you for having
have a
me.
place in the office for that.
Thank
No
you
doubt
for
about
having
it.
me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Wonderful gift.
And now, I'd like to speak briefly to Pastor Brian McGee. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to this beautiful church. It has been a long time since I was in churches in Europe to pray. But I prayed in these churches because all the synagogues were destroyed. But I found that praying to God can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a synagogue. It doesn't have to be in a mosque. it can be in a church. And I did that. And I'm here to let you know that it was a wonderful opportunity, and it is a wonderful opportunity to be here in this beautiful church with all the wonderful people here, and I thank you. And in thanking you for this opportunity, I want to also present you with my book, The Hard Road of Dreams. And I have written a dedication in this book, as I do in every book. And the dedication I'll read to you. To Pastor Brian McGee, the warmth of your heart persuades others to be peaceful. It is very short, but I think it's down to the point, and enjoy this book.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
God's peace.
Thank you
Means so
for
much.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now I come to you, Pete. Will you please come forward? You're a real friend indeed. And you're responsible for bringing me here. If it hadn't been for you, I would be someplace else. No, not that. I never played that game. I played tennis.
Oh, better yet.
But even at 95 years old, I don't play tennis anymore. But you're responsible for bringing me here, and I step into your shoes because you have, in years past, talked about the Holocaust, because you knew that it was an opportunity to tell people about this horrible period in which not only Jews were murdered, but many other people were murdered as well because they did not believe in what Hitler believed, namely to make a nation of people that were above all others in the world. And so, since you already have a book, I thought maybe I could give you and Connie something that you can share.
Thank you.
It's something sweet.
Very nice.
And thank you for all you've done to make this event possible.
Thank you.
And thank you also for your committee and the people that worked on it. I see many people here that you've worked with, and you've done an outstanding job in bringing this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. God bless. Thank you.
I'm somewhat saddened today because of the increasing hate crimes that you and I are living with. These hate crimes have resulted in the desecration of houses of worship, and they have resulted in the loss of life. We must find ways to curb hate crimes. Hate crimes can lead to something that the Holocaust embraces. And so, my dear fellows, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will take to heart that hate only leads to the destruction of mankind. What we need is a serious understanding of each other and getting along in a fashion that is credible to our society. Let me start out by saying that in my mind, there are basically three kinds of people. Those that care about fellow men, and those that don't care about anybody but themselves, and those that do harm to others to show their superiority. I'm glad that you belong to the first category, namely those that care about others, treating them with respect, and do all you can to make them feel like decent human beings. As the self-appointed ambassador for the million of men, women, and children who were murdered during the Holocaust, I deeply appreciate your invitation to speak to you. However, it will not be easy for me to perform that task. In effect, it's a heartbreaking task as a survivor to be here. All of you here in this sanctuary are survivors of some sort or other. But to be identified as a survivor of the Holocaust brings with it much pain and agony and many responsibilities. It has been many years ago, and memories generally fade, but mine have not. I live with them every day, to the end of my days. You would think that those memories by now would have lost their color and that gruesome details have faded. Not a chance. The details of the atrocities by Hitler's Nazis are always in my mind. At first, there were nightly torch parades with thousands of stormtroopers marching through the streets, pounding the pavement with their high boots while blurting fight songs. My teacher came to class in a brown uniform, demanding that we salute Hitler with outstretched arms, as you may have seen on the video, shouting, "Hail Hitler!" Next, he required us two Jewish students in the class to be seated at the rear of the classroom. It was not a promotion. We were ridiculed and made fun of, and there was no recourse. Later, I was severely beaten on the way to school, bloodied on my nose and my face, but no hospital would treat me because I was a Jew. If that was not enough, laws were passed that Jews would no longer be citizens, and all passports were marked with a large J, the J standing for Jew. Police and all other enforcement agencies were forbidden to assist or protect us, since we were known as undesirables and officially declared subhumans and vermin. And you know what vermin are. We kill them. And that's what Hitler was trying to do. Then came the pogroms known as Kristallnacht, when our home was ransacked, our belongings destroyed and set on fire. My father was badly beaten and taken to Dachau concentration camp with thousands of others. I was terrified and forced to play my violin to a crowd of cheering bystanders who just loved me, the Jew boy being tormented. We fled, only rudely reminded when a German officer on horseback rode into our temporary home shouting unreasonable demands. My dear friends, beginning some 78 years ago, from cities and towns all over Europe, Jewish men, women, and children, including their babies, were rounded up and transported what became their final destination. Including were young and old, feeble and religious. It didn't make any difference whether they were secular or not. The weak and the strong. At their destination, they were shot or gassed and then burned, especially in specially designed ovens. Others were left to starve, fester in filth, and tormented until they succumbed to disease. Infants were snatched from their mothers and killed in front of them. As their parents were murdered, they were murdered in plain sight of their children. This went on and on under the eyes of the civilized world. 1 million died, and then another, and then another, until 6 million innocent Jews and innocent souls were murdered. There are no words to explain the crimes of the Holocaust, the planned extermination of all European Jews. And if Hitler would have had his way, he would have killed Jews all over the world. Luckily, it didn't happen. The word Holocaust is derived from a Greek word, holocaustos, which means burned whole. And that's exactly what Hitler did. He burned Jews whole. They weren't necessarily killed first. They were shoved in an oven. They were gassed in a chamber. So this is what the word Holocaust means. Was there justice or accountability for these actions? I'll let you be the judge. Under Adolf Hitler, Germany had become a genocidal state. Every arm of this country's sophisticated bureaucracy was involved in murder and killing processes. Churches, the Interior Ministry, and other agencies were required to supply birth certificates to show who was or who was not a Jew. The post office delivered deportation and naturalization orders. The finance minister confiscated all Jewish property and bank accounts. German industry and businesses fired all Jewish workers. Universities refused to admit Jews, kicked out Jewish students, and fired Jewish professors. The German government operated the railroads and supervised the transporting of Jews to the death camps. Hospitals had specific orders to deny admittance to Jews regardless how critical their ailments. Doctors were forbidden to treat Jewish patients. German pharmaceutical companies had explicit permission to forcefully test drugs on Jews and Jewish prisoners, women and children included. In the eyes of the Nazi perpetrators, the killing and murder of Jews was considered one of their greatest achievements. Not one group, not one association, not one institution, nor the courts interfered with the extermination of Jews. Think about it. Basing their actions on their racist beliefs that German people were superior over all other people in the world, they removed and eventually killed many of their own. This is very important for you to understand. It was not Jews that were killed. It was German people that were killed also because they were considered racially and socially unfit to be part of this super race that Hitler was trying to achieve. This included gypsies, gays, lesbians, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and all others that did not fit into the Nazi dogma. In addition, thousands of German political and religious dissidents, such as communists, socialists, trade union members, died as a result of maltreatment. Those Germans who were mentally ill or physically handicapped, including the blind and the deaf, were taken away. These were not Jews. These were people of German nationality that were not fit to belong into what Hitler designed to be his superior race. First, they were sterilized, and then they were killed. Mind you, these were their own people, not Jews. So in addition to 6 million Jews that were killed, another 3 or 4 million German people that did not fit into that category of being a superior race were also killed. All of this were acts of genocide. There was no accountability. As this Nazi tyranny spread across Europe through all the German-occupied countries, millions of non-Jews were also persecuted, like Poles, the Czechs, Russians, and people of other Slavic countries were targeted for slave labor, and thousands of them also perished. Hitler did not give a hoot about the Geneva Convention regarding fair treatment of war prisoners. More than 3 million Russian war prisoners were ruthlessly executed. When Hitler fulfilled his ideological goals, this was what he wanted to do: erase everyone from this world that did not believe in his ideology. It gave Hitler power to expand the military and the means for racial purification. He convinced his cabinet to invoke emergency clauses of the German Constitution. This permitted him to suspend individual freedoms, including the freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. In essence, judges did nothing. To the contrary, the German judges interpreted the laws to facilitate Hitler's sinister agenda. To save myself from becoming another number of being murdered, I fled the clutches of uncertainty through many countries until finally arriving in my beloved America. After serving in the U.S. Army overseas, experienced combat in the Southwest Pacific, I continued to serve the American Army Intelligence Department at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. There I was exposed to top-secret Project Paperclip. I'm not sure whether anyone here knows what Project Paperclip was, but it was to interrogate German scientists that were brought to this country. And unfortunately, I was enlisted to help interrogate those German scientists, which was not a good job for me. The liberation of Nazi extermination and slave labor camps revealed the gruesome mass murder and atrocities on 6 million Jews, their barbaric torture and killing of innocent children, women, and men outside towns and cities as the armies occupied other territories. From documents captured by special intelligence operatives and eyewitnesses, it was determined how the Nazis and civilian collaborators tortured and murdered the Jewish captives. Now, I have viewed German documents, German films, to find out how these tortures were conducted, and it was not pretty. Now that America and its allies had won against this evil regime, the greater majority of Germans disclaimed any personal responsibility or participation in the horrible crimes that were committed. As a matter of fact, can you imagine, they pretended to have no knowledge of the horrendous, inhumane acts that were committed. As ridiculous as this may sound, they viewed themselves as the victims. Now think about that. They were clearly in favor of forgetting everything that had to do with the Nazi regime, the barbaric treatment of Jews and all others they killed. Those Germans that were identified as the worst war criminals by our victorious armed forces were tried before international courts, the Nuremberg trials. None would admit their guilt. Even so, the evidence was overwhelming. Instead, they were indignant, even claiming to be dishonored for their loyalty to Hitler, and claiming that they were only following orders. All of them wanted to turn over the page of their heinous crimes. They preferred to believe that their crimes could simply be forgotten. Even as they piously went to church every Sunday praying for forgiveness, when they should have asked for remorse and repentance. What can we learn from all this? Primarily that in a dictatorship like that of Adolf Hitler, society cannot flourish. That in a dictatorship, as we have seen in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now in Venezuela, and many other countries, democratic principles are ignored and trampled on, and as a result, people suffer. Our society, living by our Constitution, reassures us that we will never turn and return to the tortures of the Middle Ages. You and I are held accountable for our actions within the norms set by our own laws. I have told you my story, not to make you sad or make you feel sorry for me, but to strengthen your resolve to become involved in public activities and your own that draw the line against blatant racism, hatred, and particularly anti-Semitism. It's not too late for all of us here to give to the world more than we can take. Each moment of our short lives, we approach unknown situations and are required to do the right thing. But if we stumble and fail, it tends to restrict our potential. In the end, what counts are not our thoughts and ideas, nor our words, but what counts is what we do to make this a better world. I'm honored having been asked to share my thoughts with you about what has been a man-made catastrophe of unbelievable proportions, namely the Holocaust. Thank you for listening to me and hopefully remembering the lessons heard from this horrible event. Thank you again. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.